Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this meetup on AWS Game Tech. This is a brand new field and an emerging tech. And today we have with us Tabitha Graves, who is a developer relations manager at AWS Games Tech. Games Tech. Yeah. Uh, Welcome, Tabitha, to this meetup. Thank you for joining us at AWS User Group India. We are glad to have you for this meetup. Over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited, especially talking about any opportunity to talk about AWS Game Tech is a very exciting one. So a little bit about me. Actually, first off, so today we're going to be talking about an introduction to this emerging field and some of the technologies behind that. And we're also going to cover different game developer user scenarios and also and use cases, and then also dive into the community that's behind it. Um, so, uh, so with myself, my name is Tabitha Graves, and I am the developer relations manager for AWS Game Tech. Um, I am actually, I've been with the company for about almost 3 years. And I started at AWS really wanting to get into games because games is a very big passion of mine. I've been playing video games since the original Prince of Persia. It's something that I very much felt that that community was something that I definitely was passionate about. So when I finally got into AWS Game Tech, because they were building out the team, I was one of first in line to say, hey, I would love to join this opportunity. And from then on, now I am managing the different game developer communities. So different types of programs and initiatives that come up, I am the one leading those. And as you can see, I've done different database webinars. We've done AWS Game Tech has hosted different online events, which was very exciting earlier this year. So hopefully we can continue on celebrating in that success. And if you wanted to, I will provide my email again at the end of the presentation, but if you wanted to look at it there, feel free to email me and get in touch. All right. So, what is AWS Game Tech? A lot of questions that people ask. They wonder: is it a specific service? Is it a solution? How does game development tie into the cloud? I always like to, when discussing this, to go back to the beginning. So most of you should be very familiar with Amazon Web Services and all of the services that they have to offer. There's over 175. And often, as we were talking to customers, those services almost get lumped into different like use cases. So you have like, migration, archiving, and so on. So an appropriate way of trying to explain to a game developer or any developer about like how exactly to utilize all 175 services, a lot of people have tried to lump it into different products. So like compute, databases, containers, or another way of going about that is organizations. So, for example, like public sector, enterprise, or industry. And from us looking and focusing on industry, it really was us asking the question of, you know, do game developers, how can game developers utilize the cloud? And honestly, after we took a look at it, game developer goals were very much built for the cloud. So we had a team, which is basically what AWS Game Tech is. So now what? And looking at this type of like guide concept, if AWS Game Tech is more like a guide making sense of these 175 resources, then, how can we put these different use cases and solutions together for game developers? So when we're looking at the cloud, we're looking at a lot of the different goals that basically any developer, when they're looking at the cloud, is trying to fill. Stuff like low latency. So, for video games, you don't want your game to have any sort of lag You want the best experience for your players that are playing the game that you created. So cloud just innately fits that need, as well as high availability. This error message is the most terrifying message to see as a player or as a game developer. It's something that you don't want, to have that experience, for those players. You want people to be able to access the game that you are playing or the game that you had created at any point, anywhere, anytime. And also the type of global presence that AWS Cloud has to offer very much fits in line with what game developers are developing. They want to be able to go where their players are. They want to be able for the players to just have that high availability, have that low latency, and just log in and have the best game developer experience or the game experience for the game that they developed. So this brings us back to AWS Game Tech. Some of the offerings that we have, are very much in line with specific services. So we have things like Amazon Game Lift. So Amazon Game Lift is a service by AWS for session-based multiplayer games. So, games such as like Fortnite, Overwatch. It doesn't necessarily have to be as big as that. It could be, some smaller games. But basically a multiplayer aspect to where people can log into a session. GameLift actually is a managed service by AWS. So we host it. And we also offer matchmaking, queuing, all these different features within GameLift. You also have an engine such as Amazon Lumberyard. So Amazon Lumberyard is actually, a free cross-platform engine developed by Amazon based on CryEngine, if you are familiar with that in games. Some of the features actually allow AWS integration, where you can actually host your games that you're built on our servers, as well as live streaming via Twitch. And some other aspects for AWS Game Tech are the partnerships that we can provide. So, Twitch is also one of our, partners within Amazon. It's one of the subsidiaries. So we are able to actually talk to people directly, any sort of like Twitch extensions that you want to add to your game. Those are all things that we can very much do. Also, like Alexa for games, we're seeing a lot more different features such as like voice in games, which is offering some really, really exciting ways of having different types of engagements for players. So apart from, specific game solutions, a lot of people ask, well, how if I am developing this game and I'm not building a multiplayer game, or I don't necessarily want hosting or Twitch extensions, can I still utilize AWS Game Tech? Like, what is that? And so thinking about, the guide concept. So AWS Game Tech, I am part of the AWS Game Tech team, and we provide different, not just, specific services to AWS or the engine or partnerships, but we provide solutions as well. So one of the solutions looking at it, you can utilize core AWS services. We kind of bundle together different solutions based on the needs for game developers. And these needs are all, purely based on us going to game developer communities, talking to them, and seeing what solutions would be most useful to them. So we actually created with our AWS training and certification team, we created a Game Tech learning path. So anyone who is new to AWS Game Tech or even new to AWS can look at, okay, well, how do I get started with AWS? Ooh, I can also do a course with Lumberyard. We created this path with the hope of, people taking it and really genuinely understanding what Game Tech has to offer, and then having more conversations with us and expanding on, the different solutions that they're looking to build for their game. And this could be, a couple of the solutions listed below, like Leaderboards, which we will talk about later today. player churn. So how to keep your players engaged, not having them and gaining that retention and not having them drop off. Any sort of analytics, so player analytics or any sort of analytics with your game. We've developed an analytics pipeline. CI/CD, which is actually something we will talk about a little bit later as well. Any sort of like threat detection. There are different ways, especially with artificial intelligence and machine learning, of looking at different threats as you have launched your game. Of course, live ops. So a lot of these things that I previously mentioned actually fall within live ops. Matchmaking and server hosting. So a lot of different options, a lot of different solutions. And really, it doesn't even matter what type of game that you are creating. So it could be, a turn-based, it could be an RTS MOBA. You could be creating it for mobile, any sort of, console. So Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, or PC, it doesn't matter. As long as you are a game developer creating a connected game, there is a service and a solution out there that we can definitely help with. So that is the basic gist of what is AWS Game Tech, and a little glimpse of the actual AWS Game Tech solution offerings. But the most exciting part is actually diving into a lot more of the use cases that we see and have put together some of the solutions. So that's what this next part will be, is kind of a high level, and then also diving into some of the technical pieces of what makes an AWS solution. So looking at some of the common use cases, we see managed player life cycles. So with game development, and this falls in line with a lot of other development in general, it definitely revolves around the player's experience, or in development, whoever is utilizing your app. So it definitely revolves around that player engagement. So we see, we understand that it takes a very careful planning and coordination, especially on the back end with that infrastructure, to create these really impactful experiences for the players for the game that you are creating. So we created this player engagement flywheel. If you are familiar at all with Amazon and the flywheels that we create for the customer experience, is something that is incredibly important to us. And so we wanted to visualize that for our game developers in the terms of the player engagement flywheel. So at the highest level, you see that a game is fueled by very much a cycle of design and development decisions. So when a game is launched, or even if it's in alpha or beta testing, players engage with that content. And then you start to collect a lot of data, you collect a lot of analysis, or you go into analysis from that game data. And then after you analyze all that information, you change, you make adjustments, you pivot based upon what you have discovered. And that cycle definitely continues for the life of your game, even post-launch. If you are doing any sort of like reviews, people can review your app in the App Store. Like, it's, as you're collecting this information, you're making patches, you're making updates, and this cycle keeps on going. But the thing that remains the same is that the player engagement is always in the middle. So with this, that the player engagement is definitely the bridge that connects any developer to their players, and also lets them know that they're listening about the things that they don't like. So a lot of the use cases that we will talk about today have to deal with this concept, and talking about it, developing these tricks very early into the game development process. And also, it leaves, utilizing AWS services, it leaves a lot of options that you don't have to necessarily manage on your own. It's things that we can definitely help with. So definitely be mindful of that player experience, and also making sure that you're aware of all of the details and being able to pivot at a moment's notice. So Here are a few pillars that we have found most consistently called out by the game developer community. So, community building, and very briefly, what does this mean? It is fostering a community through, either social dashboards, specific team objectives, allowing the community for your game to grow, outside of your game, maybe online and forums, basically being able to have a relationship between the players and the game and being able to cultivate that and grow. There are many different aspects and solutions that we can provide to be able to have you definitely community build for your game. Measuring and responding to player behavior. So this very much goes back to our flywheel. As you are as you have released information, you've released your beta, you've released your alpha, looking at how people are actually responding to that. Are they, are there sentiment analysis ways that we can go about it, to where we utilize artificial intelligence and machine learning to see, okay, well, we launched this patch. Is the patch going well? Are people saying things about it on Twitter or social media? There are lots of different ways that you can actually get ahead of that. And make sure that you are very much aware of the actual sentiment behind all of your game launches. And then new content and features. New content and features very much it comes from community building and measuring and responding to player behavior. It is the result of all of that. But there are ways, especially with CI/CD, there are ways of getting that new content and new features out very quickly that we can also help with that as well. So getting your game development pipeline optimized and having us actually go in there and being able to help you get that to engage your players and also help keep them retained. So we're going to spend some time diving into the actual individual pillars. We're going to jump back into the community building pillar and look at specific use cases, how you can do them on AWS, how you can do them just general overall. And then we're going to dive even deeper into one of these use cases. And I can show you a reference architecture, and we can talk about the design and the infrastructure decisions behind that. So first, with community building, we're going to talk about live events. Now, this looks like Fortnite has done this extremely well with their Black Hole event. The concerts that they have done with Marshmello. They've done a rocket a few years ago. They've just cultivated this community behind everyone joining at the same time and watching these events that just happened once. They are extremely talked about. A lot of people sign on and get on their game to watch these type of events happen. So it's something that very much fosters relationships between people playing their game. And by having this fresh content, it keeps people coming back. So for this, the technology behind that would definitely be some sort of servers. So whether it is on-premises servers that you as the game developer are hosting on your own, or with AWS, we have, Amazon EC2, and definitely with auto scaling. With auto scaling, it's able to handle that traffic, all of the requests that happen. It's something that is managed for you. You won't ever have to over provision, and make sure that you have enough capacity and demand for all of your players. So economy monitoring is also a fun one as well. So in game development, we see very interesting use cases for databases. And if this is something that I love talking about databases. So if this is something that you're interested in more, please, I have my email address, as well as there is a webinar that I believe is online as well, talking about talking about databases for game development. So definitely, if that's something you want to talk about, I can dive into that more. So economy monitoring is actually one of my favorite things to talk about with graph databases. And graph databases is a no relational type database choice with it. For AWS, we utilize Amazon Neptune as our graph database choice. So it looks at the relationships between data. And these relationships can be visualized, making it an extremely useful tool, especially for economy monitoring for your game. And one of my favorite use cases for graph databases is a tool for for economy monitoring, whether that is entering a new item into a level or seeing the different areas of the game that might break by putting a new item into your level. So if you are getting an actual like visual of what your level that you have created looks like, and by adding an item, you can see very real time by adding that item how those relationships are affected with everything else. So this allows you to understand how player game progression might be affected by introducing the new item or new quest lines or something like that into a particular area. You can also see a different hierarchy of quests and relationships between everything. So you can see like what people like doing, what the typical player progression as they are going through, like let's say a specific area, what like if there is a progression for the quest that they typically do, if it breaks everything by introducing a new quest line. So it's very interesting. You can see, make sure that people aren't repeating any sort of objectives and they're moving through your map freely and planned with how you anticipated them to move. So it's one of the neatest things recently is talking about graph databases and sort of economy monitoring for those video games. And lastly, social campaigns. So social campaigns can be any sort of thing. Like if you have, I touched on this earlier, you're introducing a new patch or new update to your game, and you want to look at any sort of like sentiment analysis. You can actually create dashboards to look to see, okay, well, how is the community feeling about this last launch, update, patch, whatever. So what you would look at would be like a natural language processing tool. And Amazon Comprehend on the AWS side is a natural language processing service. So it is something that is managed, utilizes AWS utilizes machine learning to find insights and relationships through the text. So you don't have to build your own infrastructure, and definitely, like a lot of our other services, it is pay as you go and it is managed. So we're actually going to dive deeper into community sentiment management. So this is an actual reference architecture. So whenever we are talking about, if you are new to this, whenever we are talking about different solution offerings from AWS, there is typically a blog post that introduces the concept, and there are CloudFormation templates that you are able to just download and spin up those resources in your environment. So most things that I am talking about today have CloudFormation templates and has a lot more information behind it. So please let me know if you want more information. So with this reference architecture, we're looking at the several different AWS services that are behind it, including Amazon Comprehend, as well as Amazon Translate that we were just talking about. So for this specific reference architecture, we actually utilize Kinesis Firehose for this solution. So this is a community sentiment management dashboard through Twitter. So it is consistently looking at all of the data from Twitter coming in, maybe from a specific user, or maybe on Twitter, you can have those lists of people. Maybe it's looking at that type of information, or just from your Twitter account for your game. So it looks at all that information, goes into a Kinesis Firehose stream, and it looks at these different buckets. This utilizes serverless, so it's talking to Amazon Lambda, going to Amazon Translate, making sure that it is localized. So with the different regions that's happening, and then goes into Amazon Comprehend to process that information, and then goes back into Kinesis Firehose. And we also have Athena and Glue and QuickSight for making sure compiling all that information and seeing very clearly what is going on and if there are any relationships between the sentiment of my last patch. So this gives you a very broad, like I said, this is a very high level view, but I am glad to dive deeper into this if you wanted to at a later time. So measuring and responding to player behavior. So as I mentioned, this is very much like the engagement of your customers or of your players. With activity analysis, looking at something like a recommendation engine, in games, a lot of what we put out there for our game developers, if there isn't a proper understanding of, the actual player base, that could be bad. Like if you are just, throwing information or throwing, features and stuff out there that don't necessarily align to your game or even align to the people that are playing your game, that doesn't really call for a great engagement model, and you will definitely have retention issues there. So with activity analysis, this basically just keeps more players engaged by allowing them to have options, and by utilizing things like Amazon Personalize, which is a service that enables that has like real-time product and content recommendations. So a lot of this has to do with marketing, and especially with games and game marketing. As people are interested in your game, or if you have several games that people are interested in, you want to make sure that you provide them the things, more information about what they are most likely to play and keep on playing for the future. So this is just one way of actually engaging in that content early and allowing people to make options and feel like we understand what they want and how they want to play your game. So responding to threats. So with artificial intelligence and machine learning, it has come so far, and it's so interesting what we can do in the community with these type of frameworks. So looking at responding to threats, this is like us looking at our player base, or maybe looking at areas of our game, and us determining what normal looks like. And after we've determined what normal looks like, we've done the beta testing, we've done alpha, but there's still some, funky things happening. Responding to threats is basically, us looking at different anomalies, and maybe it's things that are, player caused, or, things that are malintended. Or it's, just natural things that are happening that you're not predicting that are breaking with your game. So utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning, it actually allows you to look at the different player contexts. So maybe going through chat, looking at how people are playing, if they're making weird decisions that weren't typical for them. It allows you to manage those players a little bit more effectively. Definitely detect fraud and everything before it happens. But also get a little bit more context into what your players are doing. So there's definitely two different types of fraud detection. The first is identifying specific players or behaviors, and the second is going to be more of like getting a general understanding of trends, and maybe identifying people who you think might be suspicious, but that you don't exactly know why. So these type of different frameworks are definitely important. With Amazon SageMaker, you're able to do so and respond to these threats, and it allows you to build these type of frameworks. It is a managed service, allows you to build these type of frameworks very easily for detecting these type of anomalies. and identify those suspicious activity with machine learning. So utilizing AWS machine learning and artificial intelligence, building a dynamic and performant end-to-end abuse detection pipeline. And I believe we also have a webinar about that as well, if you wanted to dive into that a little bit more. But again, utilizing SageMaker, a fully managed service, provides the ability to build, train, and deploy machine learning models extremely quickly. And then we have live procedural engagements. So, looking at Kinesis, we looked at this, especially during our last reference architecture, we dove a little bit deeper, is for real-time data streaming. We actually have another new service that came out, Amazon Interactive Video Service, that is really exciting as well. So it allows people, as they are streaming different content, it's just a new way of engaging your players. But as they are streaming this content, you're able to go in and definitely be proactive or reactive, depending on what you want. But go in and engage your players as you are streaming and delivering this content right to them. So you can do that with Kinesis. With Kinesis streams, you can do that in a couple different ways. There is, of course, Kinesis Firehose as well. But you are able to stream, content or data directly and provide that type of feature to your service or your solution that you are offering. So we are actually going to dive a little bit deeper into the thing I talked about the most, responding to threats. So I kind of mentioned this before. When we're looking at responding to threats, we're looking at different anomalies, right? So we're looking at what is not normal. And the two options that you have with, when responding to a type of threat, you have a supervised learning approach, to where you train the model in a different way, and then you have unsupervised learning. So a supervised learning approach is actually where you train a model to look and predict for a particular class, where unsupervised learning is basically where you let the model provide statistical outliers and maybe cluster populations together without providing specific labels. So it doesn't necessarily know what it's looking for, but it knows what it's looking for, and what it has found is not suitable for your environment. So the first supervised learning approach is identifying specific behaviors, and the second is going to be for more understanding general trends or identifying people who may be suspicious and not knowing why. So this specific case is a bit of an advanced one. Basically, you are pulling in data from EC2 as well as DynamoDB. So as we are looking at it, and the DynamoDB account is going to be for the metadata. So you're pulling in data from two specific sources. You are analyzing that data. So you're looking at it through Kinesis Firehose as well, through the streams of content. And you're looking at it through Glue. So this is for any type of ETL pre-processing for the machine learning pipeline. Also utilizing such things as crawlers, Amazon S3. So as you are looking at that information, it goes into like an analytics portion of it, as well as, pre-processing for analytics. And then, the machine learning training and inference, being able to gather all that data after you have put it into this giant repository, being able to gather all that data and correctly determine, okay, is this information being able to proactively detect all of those threats before they happen. So this is requiring, this is a solution talking about like a data lake, which we're seeing a lot, especially with games that have a lot of information coming out. But yeah, this is a great way and a great solution to be very proactive into what you are doing. Okay. Now, new content and features, and I'm going to take a sip of water. But like I said before, this is all a culmination of what we talked about with managing and responding to player behavior and building up that community. Looking at new content and features is just the natural next step. After you have maybe responded to player behavior, what have you done, to pivot and maybe create a patch for something that you saw coming down the line that players were actually getting into something they weren't supposed to. So new content and features. There's a couple different ways of looking at this. There are different promotions. So this is actually my favorite, and we will talk about this a little bit more as we dive deeper. But with promotions, you want typically a push notification service. So promotion is more like a seasonal event. If you have a game or like a game you created that has an esports following, as they go through different seasons or different holidays, maybe, throughout the calendar year, you can actually send out push notifications to all your players, letting them know of these upcoming events and upcoming holidays and whatever you have changed within your game. You can also, build a back-end calendar for your players utilizing different campaigns. And that's something we can dive into a little bit later. But with sending out these updates, maybe it is through like a leaderboard solution, any sort of like game announcement. Amazon Pinpoint actually enables you to send push notification. Also allows you to look at the analytics of the players that you send push notifications to. So it's a fully customizable dashboard. And like I said before, allows different player campaigns. So if there are different character roles or, different groups or guilds, you can actually send a specific push notification information to those user groups. So fast development. So CI/CD, I've talked about it quite a few times. So let's say managing and responding to player behavior, we detected a threat. We are wanting to develop that very quickly. So this is all about, creating your developer pipeline, making sure it is fully optimized. Definitely being able to cache content for fast updates, speed release cycles, as well as creating this type of like downloadable content. So AWS Code Pipeline, again, managed service allows you to do so, and definitely make sure that you are getting that information out there as quick as possible, but also as optimized as possible as well. And naturally, what comes next with fast development are fast updates. So this is, actually once you have that information, once you've developed it, getting that and getting that in front of your players. So that is something like a content delivery network, and Amazon CloudFront is especially nice for something like that. Amazon CloudFront, a lot of people is, for fast content delivery globally. It distributes the content with extremely low latency, very high transfer speeds, utilizes edge locations around the world that are specifically designed to be where the players are playing. So it allows you to have a lot of different options for different types of patches, downloadable content, any sort of new content, super fast delivery. You would want to utilize some sort of content delivery network to get that in front of your players. All right, so looking at different types of promotions, and I touched upon this with Pinpoint in the last section. So we're actually going to be looking at a leaderboard solution on AWS. So with this reference architecture, a lot is happening, but I can guide you through this process. So starting at point number 1, a player logs into your game client. So we're utilizing Amazon Cognito for authentication, assigns the user a unique ID token, and also authorizes that communication to the backend infrastructure. So utilizing a serverless look, we're utilizing Amazon API Gateway. So this invokes different Lambda functions that look for the player rank changes in a leaderboard. So as different people are playing, let's say you have the top 5 players, Amazon API Gateway authenticates with Cognito, and then it talks to Lambda, and we actually utilize Elasticache as well. Talks to Lambdas to see, okay, what is their score? Okay, their score has gone down, or their score has gone up, or someone else's score is now higher. So it actually goes and ranks the players based on that information. So it pulls all the leaderboard data from and puts it onto Elasticache, pulls it from DynamoDB as well. So in this particular solution, DynamoDB is utilized for metadata and also for embellishments for the game or for the leaderboard. Sorry. So let's say if the game is you driving a car, it's a racing game, and you win at the very end, you're looking at the leaderboard. Maybe DynamoDB allows you to put in a picture of the car that you won the race with. So as all of this is happening, any changes to that player data will trigger the Lambda function to update the client of any real-time leaderboard rank changes utilizing WebSockets via Amazon API Gateway. So any of the real-time data changes happen that way. But let's say if somebody, a player logs off, they got to the number 1 rank spot, they log off, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we need to send a push notification to this person because they are not number 1 anymore. So they can log back in and play their game and maybe get to that number 1 spot again. So that's where Pinpoint comes in. So if the player's offline, a Lambda function triggers to utilize Amazon Pinpoint and sends a push notification to the top N rankings that have changed in the leaderboard. So as we discovered or discussed before, Amazon Pinpoint is a push notification system. It can also take the different players and the ranks on the leaderboard and run player analytics. It is also great for event management. So, as we discussed before, different campaigns, it's fantastic if you have different groups, or let's say different, like if you have a mage, you have a rogue, you have a warrior, you have these different classes, all of them aren't playing the game the same. So maybe the notifications and such that you send out are all very different. You can actually put those players into different user groups and create campaigns based upon their preference of how they are playing your game. So you can make it a very interesting experience and very specific and unique to each player. So this is an example of how you can dive in with leaderboards. And as everything Amazonian, if you've watched any sort of Amazon presentation in the past where we talk about a flywheel, we always like ending with the flywheel. So for us, player engagement, we understand that the world for game developers revolves around the players. So all of the solutions, everything dealing with AWS Game Tech, all of the service offerings, all of our resources are really about us trying to help game developers build their games so they can continue engaging their players, engaging their fans, and building their communities. Hopefully you learned a lot of ways about creating that type of unique experience for both the player and yourself and the community that you're building if you are indeed making a game. So for us, I have a thing. So for us, as we are building with AWS Game Tech, we've wanted to really be involved with game developer communities. I've mentioned before, a lot of our services and the solutions that we offer are based on feedback from us talking to different game developers and really seeing like how we can affect and how we can work with them to make sure that this is something that they're interested in, something that they need. It fills some sort of gap for them. So we have many different communities. We have our AWS Game Developers Council that you can join, which really allows you to affect a lot of different marketing and product decisions that AWS is building. We also have, and this is the group that I lead, we have the AWS Community Builders program that AWS Game Tech is actually a category for. And this is a specific, developer to developer community. And it allows, if you're interested in this, you're developing games, allows you to talk to other developers as they are working on their projects, as well as, enabling and teaching out and building your community in the game developer space and in the games industry, as well as in all these other different categories that are part of the Community Builders program. So the Community Builders program is actually last week, applications closed for it for the 2020 year. But there is still, if you go to the website, there is a button for you to request information when the program opens back up at the beginning of the year for 2021. And you'd still be able to open that up and hopefully join in 2021. And we've also, with AWS Game Tech, we've done different things in the community. We have the digital download that we did earlier this year. It was an online event. I'm not sure if the information is still online. I believe the videos might still be on YouTube, but you can catch up a lot of the content that we had, a lot of different solution offerings and customer use cases we talked about specifically. So we can't be anywhere without our game developer community. And this is one of the reasons, coming out and talking about, what AWS is doing in the field of game tech. It's a very exciting time for games. And so it's definitely a pleasure being able to be in the community, lead different program initiatives, and be able to talk about these type of things for developers. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining. Like I said, feel free to reach out. This is my direct email address. So if you have any questions about any of the specific use cases that I covered, or any of the resources that I discussed, of course, I will send out more information about the AWS Community Builders program, as well as, the AWS Game Developers Council. So those are great ways of joining and becoming a part of the game developer community.
Thank you, Tabitha. That was a great presentation and quite an interesting one. So those who are currently watching, if you have any questions, you can post it in the live chat. Okay, so there has been no question so far. So I believe, yeah, so if there are any further questions, they can reach out to you, as you said, right? And this presentation is already recorded, so people can refer to this presentation at their own free time and get back to you. So thank you again. Thanks for giving this wonderful presentation on GameStake, and it's a pleasure inviting you as a presenter for AWS User Group India.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. So yeah, we can close the call as of now. Thank you.
Thank you.